Hi, this is Shauna from the Foil Fox, and today's project is using a technique that actually Tim Holtz had demonstrated. It uses embossing powder, texture paste, and a stencil. You can choose any embossing powder, texture paste, or stencil you would like, but today I'm only using one. You can see that the two cards in the back, I did not use the embossing powder, just the texture paste, and then the three in the front have also the embossing powder, and you can see that extra shine and sparkle. So I'm going to start out with a frame die just to cut the panels, and then I'm going to have a sentiment. I'm using Celebrate today. I'm showing two here, one from Neat and Tangled and one from My Favorite Things, but I'm just using the Neat and Tangled. And then the stencil Hypnotic from Penny Black, and then 3 card panels and some anti-static powder. So starting out with the Hypnotic Stencil, it has kind of an open edge to it, and then when you use texture paste, it doesn't make a clean edge. So I'm covering it with some frog tape, just the edge, and not the pattern beyond that. And then I'm going to fold that over so it's still not sticky. And that gives me a cleaner edge. It also gives an edge for me to have a little extra room to spread the texture paste, and I can pick it up a little easier. So I'm spreading this very smoothly onto through the stencil, and then I'll peel it up very carefully. And see how beautiful that is? Now I am working kind of quickly because you don't want the texture paste to dry. But I also want to mention that it is an absolute must to use the anti-static powder before you use the texture paste. You must prep your card because you don't want the embossing powder to stick just everywhere. You want it to stick just where the texture paste has been. But what this does is when you have this, the texture paste creates this really nice raised design, and then the embossing powder adds the extra sparkle. The texture paste I'm using today is just the Ranger's plain white. It works extremely well. And now that those are all have the texture paste, I'm going to add the embossing powder. For 2 of them, I'm going to be using the Vintage Champagne by Wow. That's what this is here. It has a little bit of a gold fleck in it. And then the third one is going to be just clear sparkle that's going to go on that pale rose card base. The 3 card bases I am using is this one's pale rose, one is just Nina 110 pound, and then the third one is the shimmer quartz. So I'm going to heat emboss this. Now when you heat emboss, you want to be sure that you heat it to where it melts the embossing powder, and it'll start to bubble just slightly. Move to another area once it starts to bubble. You don't want to scorch it or have your pattern kind of explode on you. So just let it start to bubble and then move to another area. And then here we are doing the final one. And I'm sorry that the camera doesn't pick up how really beautiful shimmery it is, but it's extra special. So now I'm going to cut the sentiment. I'm using some shimmer antique gold for to go on the shimmer quartz paper, and the other 2 I'm using the Nina 110 white card stock for the sentiment. I'm cutting 2 of each one of them, and I'm going to stack one on top of the other just to give some extra dimension. This is a good way to do this so you don't have to use some foam tape. Now I used the Tombow Mono liquid glue, and I really like this glue, but I should have used something that wasn't quite as wet, because you'll see that I kind of got in trouble here because I got glue on my fingers. But maybe using a glue pen or something like that would have been a better choice. I'm just making sure that those dies fit perfectly on top of one another. I'm going to do that for the rest of them. Now, because these are wedding, kind of generic wedding cards for my sister who has a B&B for her wedding guests, I'm going to make these all the same and with the same sentiment, but you can imagine that you can easily change these cards up by changing the sentiment. So now I'm going, with those done, I'm going to apply the panel, the texture paste panel, onto a card base. This one's going onto the antique gold. So this is the shimmer quartz on top of the antique gold. And then the other two, this is the pale rose, is going on to the Nina 110 cardstock. It's white, and then white on white for the third one. Now, as I mentioned in the picture in the very beginning, it showed two other cards. The only difference is that I just didn't add the embossing powder. Once you put the texture paste, you can just leave it there and let it dry. Now I'm going to apply the sentiments, and this is where I get in trouble with the glue. So I have to kind of dab it off, and then because I have a little on my hands, it sticks. And if you get a little extra little glue there like I did, I just used a little mini swab to clean that up a little bit. If you haven't seen those mini swabs, they are wonderful. I'll have them linked in our supply list, which, by the way, you can find our supply list, some close-up pictures, as well as a little bit more information on our blog. The link for the blog is down below, and you can also find some other projects that you might be interested in there too. So now that those are complete, I decided to go one extra step, and I made some envelopes using the We Are Memory Keepers envelope punch board, and I'm using a cream paper, and so I'm just taking the same stencil and I'm stenciling on the design using the Delicata Golden Glitz. Just doing it very lightly, just kind of pouncing the blending tool, because I don't want it to be too bold, because I want to be able to have her be able to address it or put their name on it and not have it be too conflicting. So I'm using worn lipstick for the pink, and then I'm going to go back to the golden glitz for the white, because as you remember, that embossing powder, that the vintage champagne, it is kind of a vanilla color with a fleck of gold. So there you have it. You have the cards all ready. I'll show you all of them, some of them with the embossing powder and then the ones without. These are with the embossing powder. I wish the camera could pick up how really beautiful that sparkle is, but give it a try and you'll see what I mean. It's really pretty in that quartz paper too, because the paper has a shimmer to it. And then these last two, you can see, are really beautiful too. They just aren't quite as sparkly because I didn't use the embossing powder. Same technique, just no embossing powder. So there you have it. All of the cards that we did today. They're a snap to make, and they have quite a big impact. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We would love that. Also remember, we have all of the supplies on our website. You can check out the supply list on our blog, which the link is down below. And there are also lots more projects you can check out. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.